At number 10 is the Gavia Hippodrome. The Gavia Hippodrome in Brazil is famous for being seriously spooky. Back when they built it in the early 1900s, workers faced strange shadows and accidents during construction, leading some to believe that angry ghosts were disturbed from their resting place. The eerie occurrences continued even after construction ended. Shadows lurked around, workers mysteriously fell, and machines broke for no apparent reason. Some folks reckon that angry ghosts were mad about the construction on their resting spot. Even today, it's still creepy. People visiting or working there say they've seen ghostly figures in jockey outfits. But get this, it's not just a haunted spot, it's also where horse betting happens. Surprisingly, it's the only legitimately legal place for gambling in Brazil. So, while ghosts might be around, luck might just be on your side when you're betting at this place. At number 9 is Minas Gerais Cambucria, the Grand Hotel. I totally butchered that. It's got quite a spooky reputation. Room number 204 there is like the epicenter of all the creepy stuff. People who stayed there talk about feeling an eerie cold, hearing knocks on the door with no one around, and even seeing things that don't quite add up. I mean, it's not just one or two stories, there are multiple accounts of these strange happenings. Visitors have reported seeing things they can't explain, hearing noises that don't make sense, and feeling a weird vibe all around that place. The Grande Hotel seems to have this mysterious aura that makes people think twice about staying there. It's like something out of the horror movies, but hey, if you're into that kind of spooky stuff, maybe it's a place worth checking out if you dare. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support this channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing the notification bell, all of which is free! At number 8 is the Jolma Building. The Jolma Building in Brazil is known for being seriously spooky. Back in 1975, a huge fire tore through this 25-story building in just under 20 minutes because of an electrical problem. It was tragic. Over 486 people had lost their lives in the fire. Even after it was rebuilt and renamed Praça de Bandeira, eerie things just kept happening. People say they've spotted ghosts wandering around the halls and rooms, but what's even creepier is the story about the 13 souls who got stuck in the elevator during the fire. Some believe that these spirits are still hanging around, adding to the haunted vibe of the place. If you're someone who gets scared easily, this might not be the best spot for a visit. The history and the story surrounding this building are enough to make your hair stand on end.
Number 7. Gibraltar Point Lighthouse. Built in 1808, the Gibraltar Point Lighthouse is reportedly home to the ghost of its first keeper, John Paul Redel Muller. He was known to keep a keg of beer on hand at his cottage to share with friends. Just north of the lighthouse was a blockhouse guarded by soldiers from Fort York. The soldiers would often row down from Blockhouse Bay to visit him, and legend has it that back in 1815, when 3 soldiers were visiting, John cut them off since he thought they already had enough to drink. A deadly brawl broke out and John mysteriously vanished. No one knew what happened to him, and the story of his disappearance was passed down, and several decades later, the 4th lighthouse keeper, George Duran, found human remains buried beneath the ground near the lighthouse on Toronto Island. Now today, visitors ascending the lighthouse have claimed to see ghostly shadows and felt the floor rumble beneath their feet. Number 6. Mackenzie House. William Lyon Mackenzie was the first mayor of Toronto, and in 1837 he led a rebellion to overthrow British rule. Now Mackenzie moved into the Bond Street home in 1859 and he died there in 1961. Mackenzie's wife Isabel died 12 years later, and in the 1950s live-in caretakers worked and lived at the Mackenzie House, and it was a story by Miss Edmund that eventually made newspaper headlines. Miss Edmund one night claimed that she was awoken by a soft touch on the shoulder. When she opened her eyes, Miss Edmund said there was a lady there bending over her, looking into her face, but a few seconds later the lady vanished. Now a few weeks later, Miss Edmund claims it happened again, but this time she said the lady drew back her hand and slapped her in the face before vanishing, as a source has said. Then in the 1960s, a type of exorcism took place in the house, and it's recorded to air on television, which made the museum an even bigger draw for fans of supernatural phenomena. A woman's ghost has also been seen roaming the hallways, phantom footsteps have been heard, and a basement printing press is said to start up all on its own. In 1960, this house was donated to the city of Toronto, and you can take tours of it today. Number 5. St. Michael's Hospital. St. Michael's Hospital was established by the Sisters of St. Joseph in 1892, and one nun is still reportedly making her rounds to this day. The hospital is famous for tales of Sister Vincenza or Sister Vinnie. Sister Vincenza worked at the hospital for 28 years as the nursing supervisor of obstetrics and died in 1958. Since 1965, visitors and staff have described encounters with Sister Vincenza, which often include her rearranging medication, giving blankets to new mothers, and turning lights on and off. However, it turns out that Sister Vinnie isn't alone in haunting this medical center. According to the hospital's records, there have been a ton of different ghostly experiences, many of which do not match the description of Sister Vinnie. There's also said to be a spirit in the back filing room of the hospital's medical records office. Possessed elevators, rearranged medication, and flashing lights are other things that go on here. Number 4. Queen's Park. The legislative building at Queen's Park has been operating since 1860, and the grounds on which it sits have been used since at least 1830. As one of the oldest urban parks in Canada, it's no surprise that the building is haunted. Now, before the construction of the legislative complex, the University Hospital for the Insane was built on this property, dating back to 1842. Now today, there are multiple ghosts. The White Lady wanders the halls, appearing with a long white flowing robe and long hair. Now the maiden wears a checkered dress with an apron which she holds over her face to conceal her features, and the most gruesome is the hanging woman who dangles from a hook in the long tunnel in the basement. Also, an apparition of a soldier in full regimental dress was spotted appearing angry as he descended the grand staircase of the main hall. Many visitors have reported sightings of a ghostly female figure, sometimes alone and sometimes in small groups of 4. And one of them is known to be malevolent, and overall it's just a spooky place. Number 3. The Dawn Jail. The original building was completed in 1864 and was reopened in 2013 to serve as the administrative wing of the Bridgepoint Active Healthcare, a rehabilitation hospital located adjacent to the jail. Now the jail originally had a capacity of 184 inmates and was separated into an east wing for the men and a west wing for the women. The jail is known for its overcrowding, inhumane living conditions, and public hangings. Abandoned Spaces reports that 60 people were hanged at the jail, and several were buried in unmarked graves on its grounds. The ghosts of the executed prisoners are said to roam the site to this day, including that of a blonde woman who hanged herself in the woman's block. Number 2. The Elgin and Winter Garden Theatre Centre. Built in 1913, originally called Lowe's Young Street Theatre, the historic venue is not only home to 2 theatres but also a few spirits. Now, the Elgin and Winter Garden Theatre Centre, its most famous ghost is the Lavender Lady. While no one knows who she is, there's speculation that she could be a rival actress of a jealous castmate, or perhaps a jilted wife whose husband fell in love with a showgirl. When she makes her appearance, it is in the grand staircase and elevator area. Those who have felt her presence notice a drop in temperature and the scent of lavender. She's also been known to call one of the 1930 manually operated cage elevators when she doesn't feel like taking the stairs. However, when the elevator door opens, the operator finds no one there except for a cool breeze and the fragrance of lavender flowers. Now, another ghost here is Sam. In 1989, after the building restoration was complete, 3 volunteers and staff heard a trombone or trumpet playing. Another odd occurrence was when the seats in the theater were flipping down and then back up. The volunteers used a Ouija board to conduct a seance at midnight on the stage of the theater, and the group communicated with a musician named Sam, and he said he was a trombone player in a 1918 vaudeville production at the Winter Garden. And coming in at number 1 is Casa Loma. Casa Loma is a Gothic revival castle-style mansion and garden that is now a historic house museum and landmark. It was constructed from 1911 to 1914 as a residence for financier Sir Henry Pellet. Now this place is absolutely beautiful, but there are some ghost stories surrounding this magnificent castle. The White Lady is someone who is believed to be a maid who worked here in the early 1900s, around the time when 60,000 people in Toronto died of influenza. She's been seen in a lot of places by guests or by cleaning or cafeteria staff as they've been cleaning up at the end of the day. Some have also reported sightings of Sir Henry Pellet and his wife Lady Mary Pellet. The tunnel leading to the castle's stables is another place where the most notorious ghost is believed to roam. home. Many have reported feeling as though they had been grabbed or had their hair pulled in the tunnel. People have also reported hearing the spirit in the tunnel sighing gruffly, as he has even been captured in recordings, speaking and interacting with visitors. In one recording, he is heard mimicking a medium who said, "Oh, he's a horrible person," while trying to make contact. Now, I've been here before and that tunnel is scary, so it doesn't surprise me that some ghosts lurk there. People also hear disembodied voices and feel touched by someone who's not there at all. Number 10. Satan's Castle, San Bernardino. Yes, this place is called Satan's Castle, and it's a no from me. Satan's Castle sits on a mountainous region that is filled with both religious and satanic lore dating back to the 19th century. There are said to be underground tunnels linking to various points of interest across the mountain, which were used during the Prohibition era. These tunnels were created mostly for transportation and smuggling booze, but also served for darker purposes. One of these tunnels is rumored to connect a Catholic church to Satan's Castle. It is said to have been the grounds for dark, ritualistic practices which included both human and animal sacrifices, along with other dark ceremonies. Not to mention, inside one of the rooms a pentagram used to be painted on the ground. Local Christians painted over it with the John 3:16 verse, but the pentagram always bled through. Definitely sounds satanic to me, and I will not be visiting there. Number 9. Preston Castle, Ione. The Preston School of Industry, also known as Preston Castle, was a reform school that opened in June 1894 and was considered one of the oldest and best known reform schools in the United States. The boys there grew their own food, raised livestock, and learned farming trades. Additionally, there was a print shop, bakery, and cobbler shop where the boys could learn skills for self-preservation in the real world. The superintendent controlled the life inside the school, and discipline was extreme. Starvation, isolation, and public paddling and lashings, and severe strategies were common at Preston. Now, this school has seen a lot of death. There are 17 men buried on the school grounds because they died there. Samuel Goins had his life ended after attempting to escape from the school. In 1950, Preston's head housekeeper, Anna Corbin, was beaten to death in the school's basement as well, and they never found out who did it. Employees and visitors believe that these young men are still haunting the school, which only closed in 1960, by the way. Those who have toured the grounds since have reported many strange sights and sounds, slamming doors, falling objects, disembodied voices, and ghostly physical contact. Number 8. Camp Pendleton, Area 41, San Diego. Camp Pendleton is a coastal Marine Corps base with a dark history. This place is divided up into sections, and Area 41 is haunted. Locks have been tampered with, furniture displaced, items gone missing, and strange noises are heard throughout the camp. Many think that this is done by one broken-hearted Marine in particular. This man was in love and had recently asked his girlfriend to marry him. After she had said yes, he thought his life was going great, but it didn't last long. The Marine was in his housing unit when his fiancée got a hold of him and told him that she was ending the relationship. He was so upset that he ended his life in a second-story room of the barracks. Now, some Marines are convinced his spirit remains in the area and haunts Area 41 in particular. A general feeling of unease is common here, and to this day, Marines claim that they hear the faint sound of a man softly humming the Jeopardy game show theme song around the grounds. I'm sorry. What? Number 7. Myrtle's Plantation. A historic home and former plantation, the Myrtle's Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana is considered one of America's most haunted places. The plantation house is rumored to be on top of an ancient Tunica Indian burial ground, which is just like, why do people keep building things on burial grounds? Of course the place is going to end up being haunted. Now, Myrtle's Plantation is home to at least 12 ghosts, and it's often reported that 10 people had their lives ended in the house. Now, there are many creepy legends surrounding the property. It's said there is a ghost who reportedly walks, staggers, or crawls up the stairs and stops on the 17th step. Some have said that this is William Drew Winter, the victim of the only verified homicide in the house. on the front porch of the main house and, according to legend, staggered or crawled up the stairs but collapsed dead on the 17th step. Alternate versions of his death claim that he managed to crawl up the stairs and collapsed into his wife's arm on the 17th step. Regardless, that man died on the 17th step. Now, the tale of the cursed mirror is one of the most famous, as according to the legend, the former owner of the house, Sarah Woodruff, and her 2 daughters were poisoned by their slave and are trapped inside the mirror. Visitors of the house report seeing handprints, strange marks, and even figures dressed in old-fashioned clothes lurking in the mirror. Number 6. Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill was a neighborhood in the old 4th Ward of the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which became infamous for the worst tenement slum in the city. However, in 1900, a 3-room apartment on Cherry Street gained some fame for being haunted. According to reports, for 19 years, even in overcrowded New York City, no tenant had been able to remain within the apartment longer than a few hours before experiencing terrifying things. It was said the pictures turned upside down on the walls, furniture moved, and residents were physically assaulted. The poltergeist activity was believed to be due to a spirit of an old French woman, a widow who ended her life by hanging herself following her husband's death. Now, it seems like this ghost didn't want any roommates, and personally, I don't blame them. Now, this location shouldn't be confused with the Cherry Hill estate in Albany, which is also supposed to be haunted. Number 5. Dragslum Castle. Dragslum Castle in New Zealand, Denmark is thought to be haunted by around 100 spirits. One of these used to be a royal named James Hepburn, 4th Earl of Bothwell, who was imprisoned in the castle for 5 years until he passed away in 1576 or 1578. Being in solitary confinement drove him insane before his death. His ghost can apparently be seen riding into the castle's courtyard on his horse. There are also tales of a grey lady and a white lady haunting the castle. The white lady's story is somewhat more creepy. She was the daughter of one of the former owners of the castle, and falling in love with a peasant or commoner was unacceptable in those days, but that is exactly what the white lady did. Her father was so upset by this turn of events that he ended her life and immersed her body inside a wall. Today, the white lady haunts the castle, most likely because she's unable to escape her eternal prison, which is just sad. Now, it is said that when the walls of the castle were torn up in the 1930s during a plumbing job, a skeleton in a white dress was discovered inside. Number 4. The LeBaron Hotel. In 1982, California newspapers reported that the LeBaron Hotel, now the Wyndham San Jose Hotel and Resort, specifically room 538, which was said by employees and visitors to be haunted. The story began with housekeeper Lupe Monsalves, who claimed that she first came across the spirit haunting the room in 1979 or 1980, after the death of a young woman from in November of that year. She heard a voice whispering her name and her hair was pulled, but she was alone at the time. Following the report, the hotel was overloaded with requests to reserve the haunted room for the night. Guests reported other phenomena such as elevators stopping on the 5th floor by themselves, faucet in room 538 turning on and off, and a woman in white was seen entering the unoccupied room. Number 3. Big Bull Tunnel. Newspapers reported in August 1905 and 1906 that the Big Bull Tunnel in Virginia, part of the Norfolk and Western Railway line, had been the site of paranormal manifestations as reported by a train crew. Local citizens were also disturbed by the phenomena, which included ghastly sounds like a man groaning in pain. A voice made declarations like, "They're drinking my blood." According to witnesses, respectable railway employees, the tunnel was examined and no evidence of faking this could be found. Now my question is, was this spirit attacked by vampires? Why would they say they are drinking my blood? That is just, gross. Now, it was believed at least 3 men lost their lives in the tunnel. There's a report about the tunnel from 1901 indicating Robert Lemon, engineer, had his skull crushed and wasn't expected to live, and in 1904 a flagman was knocked off a train and fatally injured. Now, are these the men who are haunting the tunnel? I don't know, and I don't want to find out. Number 2. Cinco Saltos. The ghosts haunting the town of Cinco Saltos in Argentina are said to have their origins in black magic. magic. One of the tales has it that someone young drowned in the Pellegrini Lake near Bajo Negro, where witchcraft is said to be performed. It's alleged that the ghost of the poor victim still haunts the lake. Now, visitors in the area have reported hearing cries, but none of them have been able to trace the source of the sound. Stories of groups of people in black robes performing strange rituals have also made the rounds, while others have reported seeing UFOs in the area. In 2009, the intact corpse of a girl was found inside a cemetery. She had never been buried, her body was simply stuffed into a box and left inside an ossuary back in the 1930s. Naturally, after this discovery was made public, several people reported seeing a specter floating around the cemetery, and again, I would not want to mess with these guys. That sounds horrifying. And coming in at number 1 is Castle of Good Hope. Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa was built in the 17th century by the Dutch East Indian Company. It's the country's oldest colonial building, originally serving as a replenishment station for ships passing the waters of the Cape. Now, the first reported paranormal occurrence was an apparition of a tall gentleman who was seen in 1915 on one of the castle's ramparts. The man wasn't seen again until 1947, when he was seen regularly over 2 weeks. He'd be seen jumping off the side of one of the castle walls and walking between the basins. One of the most popular stories associated with the castle involves the former governor, Pieter Gaspert van Noot. He died on April 23, 1728, the same day he had sentenced 7 soldiers to death after they were caught attempting to desert the military. And it's believed one of the soldiers placed a curse on him and demanded he come watch the execution, which he didn't. Later that day, Pieter was found dead, slumped over his death with a look of terror on his face. Now, another famous haunting is the Lady in Grey, as she's been witnessed running through the castle, holding her face and crying hysterically. However, since a woman's body was found during recent excavations, her ghost hasn't been reported. Hopefully, her soul has been set free. Then, sometimes in the 1700s, a soldier was found dangling from the bell rope in the bell tower, which overlooks the entrance to the castle. After his death, the bell tower was sealed off. However, the bell has been known to strike off its own accord to this day. Now, there's also a ghost of a black dog who has been known to pounce on unsuspecting visitors, then vanish into thin air, so that's just really spooky. Coming in at number 10 is Leap Castle. Built at some point between the 13th and late 15th century, the Irish castle called Leap Castle has seen plenty of gruesome deaths. As legend has it, during the struggle for power with the O'Carroll clan, which just so happened to love poisoning dinner guests, one member plunged a sword into his brother, a priest, as he was holding mass in the castle's chapel. This room is now called the Bloody Chapel, and the priest is said to haunt the church at night. Now, the horror doesn't end there though, as during renovations in the early 1900s, workmen found a secret dungeon in the Bloody Chapel with so many human skeletons, they filled 3 cartloads when hauled away. Now, the dungeon was designed so that prisoners would fall through a trap door, have their lungs punctured by wooden spikes on the ground, and die a slow, horrific death within earshot of the clan members above. Yeah, that sounds like a horrible way to die. Now, the claims of paranormal activity include the existence of a red lady ghost, the ghost of 2 girls, and an elemental spirit associated with Mildred Darby. Now, the castle describes itself as the world's most haunted castle, and with all this going on there, I have to agree. Number 9. Poveglia Island. Poveglia is one of the scariest haunted islands in Europe. A series of mysterious activities were detected on the island, and that is probably the main reason why the island is closed for visitors today. The island was a place where victims of the plague were quarantined and infected dead bodies were disposed of. It's said that the remains of over 100,000 souls are buried there. Now, the island was later a site of a nursing home and a psychiatric hospital. It's rumored that it had a mad doctor who carried out unconventional treatments on his patients here before eventually throwing himself from the church's bell tower to avoid being caught and punished. Due to this, the bell was later removed, but people from the surrounding islands claim to have heard it echoing in the night on multiple occasions. Now, the hospital eventually closed and the island was abandoned in 1968, but I'm sure there are some dark spirits lurking around there still. Number 8. Eastern State Penitentiary. Eastern State Penitentiary is a former prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now the punishments here were horrible, to say the least. There was a water bath where inmates were dunked, then hung out on a wall in winter until ice formed on their skin. There was the mad chair, which bound an inmate so tightly that circulation was cut off, resulting in them needing amputations. There was the iron gag that was a punishment where an inmate's hands were tied behind their back and strapped to an iron collar in the mouth so that any movement caused the tongue to tear and bleed profusely. And finally, there was the hole, which was an underground cell where prisoners had no light, no human contact, no exercise, no toilet, and little food and air. With all these horrors, it's no shock that the place is haunted. Cell Block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling, Cell Block 6 for shadowy figures darting along the walls, and Cell Block 4 for visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers, and one of the most legendary tales comes from Gary Johnson, who helps maintain the prison. In the early 1990s, he had just opened an old lock in Cell Block 4 when he said a force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. He described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell. He also added that tormented faces appeared on the cell walls, and that one form in particular beckoned to him. Yeah, I would not want to go there.
At number 7 is the Serra da Abobora in the Amazon jungle. Deep within the Amazon jungle lies a spine-chilling spot. It's infamous for a haunting legend involving an ancient ghost named Urutau, I think. This spectral being supposedly lures unsuspecting souls with the mesmerizing melody of a beautiful bird song, but here's the catch. Once drawn near, dreadful things reportedly start to unfold. It's said that those who venture too close to this spirit face frightening and inexplicable occurrences. It's no wonder very few tread into this part of the Amazon. This eerie tale teaches us a sobering lesson that even in the midst of breathtaking places like in the Amazon, there might lurk spine-tingling mysteries best left undisturbed. At number 6 is the Petropolis Museum. The Petropolis Museum, also known as the Imperial Museum of Brazil, has an eerie reputation that's tied to its 19th century origins. Constructed within the Grand Palace of Emperor Dom Pedro II, this site is believed to house the ghost of the former emperor himself. Visitors and staff reported sightings of this apparition, claiming to have witnessed his spectral figure moving through the halls, particularly after nightfall. This spectral presence has turned the Petropolis Museum into one of Brazil's most notorious haunted places. Despite its spine-chilling reputation, there remains a curious allure for those brave enough to explore its haunted corridors and experience the unsettling atmosphere firsthand. For those with a strong heart and a penchant for the supernatural, this haunted locale in Brazil might offer an unforgettable, albeit potentially hair-raising experience. At number 5 is the Brasilia City Hall. You know, the Brasilia City Hall might seem like just another government building in Brazil's federal district, but it has been said that this place, sitting right there in Brasilia, has a history that might make you think twice before wandering in alone. Legend has it that this city hall wasn't always a place for politicians and meetings. No, it was once a mortuary where they stored a bunch of bodies before they were laid to rest. And get this, the place burned down at one point, only to rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Now, the creepy stuff doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. People have reported doors slamming shut out of the blue, cabinets making a racket, and windows closing without a soul touching them. Oh, and there's a story about a guy who got locked in a room all by himself while there wasn't a single other person around. Pretty spooky. At number 4 is the road to Petropolis from Rio de Janeiro. As you head down this road from Rio de Janeiro, this road has some spooky stories attached to it. People driving there have claimed to see a strange thing. A blonde lady on the side of the road. I mean, it doesn't sound so strange, but what is odd is that she seems to be signaling for help, pointing at a broken down car and a body lying nearby. Now, when folks stop to assist, they freak out because it's the same woman they just saw moments ago, now lying lifeless by the car. And here's the creepy part. Poof! She and the car vanish into thin air. It's left those drivers feeling pretty shaken up. So if you're planning to take that road, just keep your eyes peeled and stay sharp. You never know what strange things might happen along the way. At number 3 is the Dream Beach. The Dream Beach in Sao Paulo, Itanheim, holds a chilling reputation among haunted spots in Brazil. Legend has it that the lingering spirits of a deceased couple haunt this very shore. Witnesses claim to have glimpsed these apparitions, two spectral figures, their their forms decayed, vanishing into thin air without a trace. Even the beach's maintenance crew attest to eerie occurrences, citing unexplained voices and unsettling noises resonating across the deserted expanse in the dead of night. The spectral setting serves as a cautionary tale, warning visitors to proceed with extreme caution lest they too become entangled in the mysteries that shroud the dream beach. And at number 2 is the road to Victoria. Truckers often drive down the road to Victoria in Campo's Rio de Janeiro, but there's something eerie about it. Lots of drivers say they've seen ghosts while on this road. These spooky figures suddenly appear in front of the trucks, causing drivers to panic and hit the brakes to avoid hitting them. Now what's really weird is that as soon as the trucks stop, these ghostly figures just vanish. People believe they might be the spirits of construction workers who perished while building the road. It's like they're stuck there, tied to the construction work they're used to. That would really suck. Imagine being forced to haunt the place you worked for the rest of your afterlife. Boy oh boy. It's a pretty scary place and lots of folks avoid driving there at night. It's the stories about these ghosts that make people think twice about taking that road. And coming in at number 1 is Snake Island in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Now this place technically isn't haunted, but if you ask me, it's definitely the scariest place on this list. This remote island is home to the golden lancehead vipers, whose venomous bite packs a punch that's 5 times stronger than any snake found in Brazil. But they're not the only snakes around, as in fact, here is where the snake density reaches nightmarish proportions. Imagine 1 to 5 snakes lurking in every square meter. Why are they so fearsome? Well, blame it on geography. When Snake Island parted ways with mainland Brazil 11,000 years ago, these snakes were forced to confront evolution by becoming aerial assassins. Yes, that's right, with no terrestrial prey to feast upon, they mastered tree dwelling and developed a venom 5 times more potent than their mainland kin. This lethal venom can eliminate birds instantly and even, get this, melt human flesh. So the Brazilian government wisely bans entry to this reptilian Eden. Very wisely. It's a chilling reminder that nature's adaptability can birth monsters even in the most unlikely places.
Kicking off our list at number 10, Room 206. This gives me Stephen King 1408 vibes, and I'm not sure that you're ready. Next time you visit Florida, make sure you read every customer review before you check into a hotel, because some of them might be full of ghosts. That might be a thing that you just might have to deal with. Room 206 at the Super on International Drive. Apparently, it's super haunted. Guests have reported the bed shaking in the middle of the night, probably terrible for your sleep, or freezing cold air even though the AC is turned off. And worst of all, guests have seen their bed look as though somebody was sleeping there moments before, even though it was perfectly made right before they checked in. Can ghosts squat? Is that legal? We've got a couple of spirit squatters in our room. Gotta move. Number 9, Disney on Ice. Many families love to visit Orlando at this time of year. The theme parks there are spectacular, especially Disney World. I went once when I was younger, but I don't recall ever seeing a real life Walt Disney. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the fact that he died in 1966. Who knows? But never say never. One of Orlando's oldest tales is that Walt Disney had his body cryogenically frozen after his death. And right now, apparently it's being stored in a bunker underneath the theme park. I mean, that's a bit more creative than being cremated. I'll give him that. It's pretty Walt Disney of him just to freeze himself forever. A grad from the University of Central Florida Film School, Benjamin Lancaster, they actually made a film about this whole idea. It's called The Further Adventures of Walt's Frozen Head. That's a family classic, some would say. Number 8, Scarlett O'Hara's. You're gonna need 2 pieces of ID for this next one, alright? Perhaps the most haunted bar in Florida, located in St. Augustine, Scarlett O'Hara's is haunted by a past owner. Many believe that spirit likes to make itself known to guests. That's always fun. Try and go grab a pint and now you got a ghoul in front of you. That spirit is one of George Coley. Now George sadly bit the bullet one night when he was in his bathtub, so now we have a series of unexplainable events. Plates and glasses will sometimes move across the bar on their own, and the jukebox keeps playing Help Me Rhonda even when it's unplugged. So that's absolutely terrifying. If you want to check it out now, be warned, because it's a full-on tourist attraction at this point. But if you go, you can pose alongside the same bathtub that George Coley died in. Yeah, how lovely is that? Are we going to Disney World? Nah, even better. Scarlett O'Hara's. Yeah, you're gonna love it.
Number 7. The Hotel de Coriando, San Diego. Hotel de Coriando is a historic hotel that opened in 1888. Kate Morgan has haunted this hotel since 1892, the year she checked in and awaited the arrival of her husband. The two were traveling con artists, and not surprisingly, her husband never showed up, and 4 days later, Kate was found dead at the bottom of an outdoor staircase leading to the Coronado Beach. Today, those who check into Kate's room, which is now room 3312, have had spooky experiences to say the least. Curtains blowing even though the windows are closed, objects moved by unseen hands, murmuring sounds, and even sightings of Kate walking down the hallways and peering out the windows have all been reported. Her ghost is often seen both in the hotel and on the beach. Now room 3519, formerly room 3502, is also haunted. Once a maid's room, it's been the site of numerous paranormal occurrences, such as objects moving around by themselves. Number 6. The Whaley House, San Diego. The Whaley House is the oldest brick structure in Southern California and was the home of Thomas Whaley and his family. At various times, it also housed Whaley's General Store, San Diego's second county courthouse, and the first commercial theater in San Diego. The house has witnessed more history than any other building in the city, and it is extremely haunted. One of the most infamous ghosts there is the spirit of Yankee Jim Robinson. Yankee Jim was hanged in the gallows where the house now stands in 1852 after being convicted of stealing horses. Thomas Whaley himself, who owned and lived in the house with his family years later, said they could hear heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs. Now visitors have reported cold spots and the feeling of their chest and throat tightening within the home. Others claim to have seen Yankee Jim too, an apparition that appears and disappears when you get too close. Today, and for many years, visitors to the house have also reported seeing Thomas. They usually see him wearing a frock coat and pantaloons standing on the second-story landing. Others have seen his wife Anna, usually floating around in the garden or the downstairs room. Her ghost, which appears white and billowy, seems to just drift about and then disappears. Number 5. Winchester Mystery House, San Jose. Now after finding out what this place is, I really want to visit here. I mean, just by the name Mystery House, it's cool. Now some backstory on the house: Sarah Winchester lived a tragic yet interesting life. She married William Wirt Winchester in 1862, who was a very wealthy man. Sadly though, her husband, mother, and father-in-law all passed away within the same year. To deal with her grief, she moved to California after gaining a large inheritance from her husband. Then on top of all of that, Sarah was being haunted by the spirits of those whose lives were ended by the Winchester rifle, which her husband's company had invented. After her husband passed away, a psychic told her to evade the spirits, she would need to move out west, buy a home, and build non-stop. She took 36 years to construct the home, and this house has 6 kitchens, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 17 chimneys, 160 rooms, and many doors and stairs that lead to nowhere. Workers and visitors swear they hear howling at night, loud creaking, and sometimes the kitchen smells like someone is actively cooking. But regardless if you believe in ghosts or not, the house is absolutely stunning. Number 4. Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, Los Angeles. The Hollywood Roosevelt is considered to be one of the most haunted hotels in Los Angeles. It first opened its doors in 1927 and was a frequent home to Marilyn Monroe, who often stayed in the second floor cabana. Interestingly, the doors to this hotel are still open, allowing visitors to spend the night in Marilyn's suite, and some people claim to have seen Marilyn's ghost smiling and blowing kisses at them in their hotel mirrors. Hotel workers often talk about seeing the ghost of Charlie Chaplin and feel temperatures drop quickly from one room to the next. The apparition of Montgomery Clift has been blamed for patting guests' shoulders and watching maids in room 928, where he stayed for 3 months while filming From Here to Eternity. The ghost of Carole Lombard has also been spotted floating around the upper floors, and in the Blossom Room, where the first Oscars were held, 2 ghosts have been spotted, a presence of a tuxedoed man and a presence of a man in a white suit. Seems like if you want to meet a dead celebrity, the Roosevelt Hotel is the place to go. Number 3. Alcatraz, San Francisco Bay. The famous maximum security prison Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary earned a reputation as one of the most brutal and inhumane prisons in in the country during its day. The strong currents around the island and cold water temperatures made escape nearly impossible, and the prison became one of the most notorious in American history. The prison closed in 1963, and the island is now a major tourist attraction. A total of 36 prisoners made 14 escape attempts, 23 were caught alive, 6 had their lives ended by guards during their escape, 2 drowned, and 5 are listed as missing and presumed drowned. Now, during its 29 years in use, Alcatraz held some of the most notorious American criminals, including Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, and Bumpty Johnson. Today, it's a tourist attraction that many believe to be haunted. Inexplicable events happen, like the sound of someone playing the banjo. Many believe this to be the spirit of Al Capone, who spent his last days at the prison playing a banjo in the shower room to avoid being injured in the yard. The smell of smoke, the sounds of cell doors slamming, disembodied voices, moaning, and screams have also all been reported. Number 2. Queen Mary, Long Beach. Queen Mary is a retired British ocean liner that sailed from 1936 to 1967. She sailed to the port of Long Beach, California, where she is permanently docked. The city of Long Beach bought the ship to serve as a tourist attraction, featuring restaurants, a museum, and a hotel, but claims were made that the ship was haunted. There are resident spirits, including Jackie, the little girl who haunts the first-class pool, John Petter, who was crushed by a watertight door, Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark, who accidentally drank dry cleaning fluid instead of gin, and the cook, who was baked alive by his own kitchen staff during World War II. But most arguably, the most notorious location on the ship for paranormal activity is room B340. Reports claim someone was knocking on the door in the middle of the night, bathroom lights turning on by themselves, the sink faucet turning on and off on its own, and unexplained bathroom doors shutting. Some guests have reported the covers of their bed being pulled off while asleep and waking to see a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. There are even more stories about this place, but I don't have enough time to fit them all in. If you're really interested in Queen Mary, I say do some homework on it because it definitely gets creepier. And coming in at number 1 is the Cecil Hotel, Los Angeles. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1925 as a well-furnished hostelry frequented by respectable people, but that didn't last long. As downtown became more and more dangerous, the Cecil became a place where bad people stayed, like the Night Stalker aka Richard Ramirez and Austrian killer Jack Unterweger spent time there. The Black Dahlia was rumored to have had her last drink at the hotel bar before she turned up dead a few miles away. In 1962, Pauline Otten jumped from the 9th floor window, ending her life. That same year, Julia Moore jumped from an 8th floor window, and Helen Green from the 7th floor in 1954. The Cecil Hotel may have rebranded itself recently as the Stay on Main, but it just can't shake its reputation as a place where scary things happen. In 2013, the body of Canadian tourist Elisa Lam was found in the hotel's rooftop cistern. Her body was discovered by a hotel maintenance worker investigating complaints of flooding and low water pressure. And yes, people had been showering in and drinking that water. Ugh. And last but not least, the ghost of a boy has reportedly been photographed outside a 4th floor window. Spooky. Number 10. Humber College Lakeshore Campus. Oh, Humber, my former college. Shout out to the acting for film and television program and television writing and producing programs. Now, if you've ever been to Humber, you know that the campus is haunted. The Lakeshore Psychiatric Hospital was in operation on what is now Humber College's Lakeshore grounds from 1890 to 1979. Now, there's been ghosts sighted there, and it's a nurse. She was apparently having an affair with a patient, and then for some reason she chose to hang herself on the apple tree in the orchard, Humber Business School professor Steve Bang said. In the cottage area of the college, specifically Building G, is haunted. The nurse was spotted in many cases in G Building, which is where people used to see her through the windows at night until the windows were boarded up. And I will say, Building G always gave me the creeps. Also, there's tunnels underground connecting all the buildings, and it's said that's how nurses transfer patients around around the grounds. Now I remember when I first found the door to the tunnel, my friend Summer and I were so confused, as you can see here. Now they also use the tunnels to film famous TV shows and movies like Suicide Squad, which is pretty cool. Also, I think my dorm my first year was haunted as I heard knocking coming from inside my closet, our lights flickered 24/7, and I always felt like someone was watching me. Number 9. Fairmont Royal York. Right across from Union Station, this hotel is full of history. Now there are 5 main hauntings here. The first is in regards to the Fairmont Royal York's Crystal Ballroom, or should I say the former Crystal Ballroom. The Fairmont's Crystal Ballroom was closed down permanently because it violated a number of fire codes. However, since the closure of the ballroom, many people who have stayed in the rooms directly underneath say they hear noises such as music and talking coming from the floor above. Now it's also said that the elevator will sometimes take you up to the ballroom floor without anyone ever pushing the button. The second haunting is of a former banquet porter who was found hanging in the stairwell of the 19th floor, an area where the meeting rooms are held. Once in a while, staff report seeing the porter's upper body float around the 19th floor. The third haunting / unexplained event is the sound of children laughing and running up and down the halls. Many guests have complained about children, but many also admit to opening their doors and seeing an empty hallway. Then there's a man on the 8th floor who roams around wearing a purple jacket. However, that is all that is known about this ghostly figure. And finally, there are stories that a very wealthy man visited the hotel with his new bride, and himself and her now both lurk around the hotel at night. He mostly dwells in the stairwells, but the bride can be found in the room she stayed that night. Number 8. The Keg Mansion. Now a restaurant, this house once belonged to the Masseys. Lillian was the only daughter of Hart Massey, and she died in 1915 while living in today's Keg Mansion house. According to the legend, the tragedy of Lillian's maid happened just after her death. The maid was downstairs as a dying Lillian lay in her bed, and when the doctor announced that she had died, it said that the maid was witnessed walking out to the main hall, up the stairs to the oval vestibule, and she fashioned a noose, wrapping one end to the wood railing. She hoisted herself up and over the side. House guests found her swinging above the foyer right near the grand staircase. Now most believe her death was due to grief, and over the years numerous guests and staff have allegedly seen the maid's body dangling over the stairs and then disappearing. Guests have also reportedly seen ghostly children playing throughout the restaurant, and the second floor washroom is said to be haunted as well.
Number 7. Stranahan House. You don't want to be stranded at the Stranahan House. It's gonna be bad news. Fort Lauderdale has a few haunted hidden gems, and the oldest house just happens to be the most haunted. What do you know? What odds are that? What odds are that? What are those odds? There we go. The house's OG owner was Frank Stranahan, and today if you visit ye old stomping grounds, well, you might catch Frank in a photo or two. It's said that Frank still oversees the place and he regularly shows up in guests' photos. So this ghost likes to photobomb. That's pretty amazing. I kinda like that. I suppose being trapped in the same house for all of eternity probably gets a little boring from time to time. Just to pop into a photo, throw some peace signs up, and then disappear back into the walls. Ivy Stranahan, Frank's late wife, she also has made an appearance or two. Nice. True love is haunting the same house forever. Guests have felt a cold hand on their shoulder, and her perfume still lingers in the hallway. Must have been some good strong stuff. Nice. Now it's not all fun and games. Augustus Stranahan, aka Frank's father, well, his ghost likes to throw books. It's really aggressive, so heads up for that, I guess, if you go. Cheers. Number 6, the Plaza Resort and Spa. Ah yes, kick back and relax with ghosts. It's just what you want. You're never alone, I guess. That's a plus side. The Plaza Resort and Spa sounds like a relaxing getaway until you start looking up footage of the actual resort. One's gonna get your attention for sure. Back in August 2013, security cameras captured late night footage of this shape-shifting ghost, some sort of spirit, some scary blob. It's bad news, really, in any regard. What happened was the original building was destroyed by fire in 1909, and current staff will testify that they've seen the ghosts of victims caught in that blaze. How they know? I have no idea, but apparently they do know. It's a lot of details for one ghost appearance. One of the most common sightings includes a woman whose spirit is known to mess with the elevators and make items in the kitchen disappear. Okay, really? That last one's for sure an employee stealing food. He's like, oh yeah, I don't know. I think a ghost ate that cheesecake, boss. I don't know, spooky stuff, spooky. Number 5, the Blue Anchor Pub. Another bar, another haunted bill to pay. Here we go, debit or credit. Heading over to Delray Beach, the Blue Anchor pub was built in 1840s in London, but the wooden interior was sent to New York City and then later on sent to Florida in 1996. So yeah, these spirits must be confused. They go from Jack the Ripper to some dude wearing a Yankees hat talking to a TV. Trapped in the wooden interior is the ghost of one Bertha Starkey, who was sadly killed by her husband back in the 1840s. Now, you know Bertha is lurking about when you hear rattling pots in the kitchen, and sometimes if you're really unlucky, you'll hear wailing in the middle of the night. Nice. Again, horrible sleep at this place. The Blue Anchor sounds like a really relaxing time, but every night at 10 o'clock, the current owners will blast a ship horn to scare away her spirit. I don't know, I feel like blaring a ship horn at 10 p.m. is more jarring than some pots and pans moving sometimes. You know what I mean? I'd rather hear the pots and pans than BOOM in the middle of the night. No way. Number 4, the Biltmore Hotel. Another hotel to avoid at all costs. Awesome, we love these ones. First of all, do you actually like staying at a hotel? Some people love it. Some people find it super relaxing. I can't help but think about what went on in the bed before me. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, why does this part of the bed feel a little bit caved in? What's going on here? Every time I'm in a hotel, I have the worst dreams and I can't sleep at all. The Biltmore Hotel in the city of Coral Gables is also one of the most haunted hotels in Florida. You've probably heard of this at some point. It all started in 1926 during initial construction. The Biltmore witnessed a foul killing on the 13th floor. The 13th floor of all floors, my God. The Biltmore was also turned into a military hotel during World War II before ultimately being closed and then abandoned later in 1968. Now, the city renovated the hotel later on in the 80s, but it didn't take long for ghost stories to start to spread. It's horrible, horrible past, I mean, more than fair. Now, of course, the most activity is on the 13th floor, so if you do check this one out, really double down, go to the haunted floor, you know, don't just look outside and then book. Go in, stay a night. I can't believe some buildings don't have a 13th floor. Can you imagine that? Well, they do, but everyone pretends that they don't, you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, it's 12. I don't know, we'll see. Are you a 13th floor believer? Comment down below. Me personally, I don't think so, because it's the 14th or the 12th. Or the 13th, I don't know anymore. No one knows anymore. It goes 11, 12, 14. You're like, really? What's the 14s? We know what's going on here, come on. Number 3, Tampa Theater. If you're a fellow theater kid, you're also gonna love this one. Here we go. Tampa Theater opened up in 1926. The theater is now said, of course, to be haunted by a woman that was struck and killed by a carriage on the property. Imagine being hit by a carriage, it's so slow. This was actually before the theater was built, so her spirit has been there for a while. If you go to Tampa Theater today, you might catch a glimpse of that woman in a white gown walking across the mezzanine hallway. This time without carriages whipping through, hopefully, sans carriage. Imagine telling somebody in front of you to sit down during a show, then they just disappear. You're like, I think that was a ghost. I think that was probably a ghost. It says in the playbill, ghost, so maybe that was her. Tampa Theater, of course, has leaned into these claims. Now they offer Ghosts of Tampa Theater Tour, where guests can learn about its haunted history. I'd love to do this tour. I don't know, maybe I'll go to Florida. Who knows? I won't. I'm like, I'm probably not going to. Number 2, Key West Cemetery. A cemetery that's haunted. Get out of town. You don't say. The Beachside Cemetery was built in 1847. Now, it was built specifically for victims of a hurricane that occurred a year prior in 1846. That's terrible. Now, the cemetery is the final resting place for roughly 80,000 to 100,000 people. So yeah, I can only assume there's a ghost or two hanging out. That's extremely tragic. Walking through a graveyard at night is scary enough anytime, but Key West Cemetery is so specific that the entire time you're walking through, you feel connected in a way. Now, me personally, I'm all set. I don't want to feel connected to an 1846 tragedy. I'm all set. I'll go the long way around the cemetery, then I'll meet you on the other side, if anything. But if you're into this kind of thing, they also offer ghost tours, so knock yourself out. There you go. Apparently, it's too scary for children, so that's a plus. Lines will be a little shorter than usual. And finally, number 1, St. Augustine Lighthouse. A scary lighthouse? How? How is that possible? The St. Augustine Lighthouse is located, of course, in Florida and was built between 1871 and 1874. And it's considered Florida's first official lighthouse ever. Imagine that. Boom, let there be light. Hey, I made you a lighthouse. Enjoy, we're all good now. There have been several tragic events over the following years, seeing as it's the first lighthouse ever. Seen a lot of history. But even during initial construction, there were several freak accidents on site. Today, said spirits are still lurking about. Sightings of shadowy figures are common, but one time, This one time, somebody saw a hand coming through the tower door. Yeah, a floaty hand, like from Idle Hands. How terrifying is that? Can you imagine just a Smash Bros hand just lurking near you? Several guests have reported furniture also moving around on its own, which is definitely a hazard. And one person even said that they had some of their arm hairs plucked off of them while they were in the basement. Probably that floaty weird hand just doink. Give me one of those. Another guest felt someone grab their ankle at one point while walking down a hallway, which actually caused them to trip and fall down. So something's going on. I don't know what this ghost hand wants, but it's pretty chaotic to me, it seems.